everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name's Gretchen, and today I am here with another reading recap. Since we last chatted, I've been able to finish 3 books, so I figured I would take a couple minutes to talk about them and also let you know about what my current reads are, and then hopefully get to talk about what I am planning on picking up in the near future. So since we last talked, there were 2 books that I was actively reading during my last recap that I finished, so we'll go ahead and talk about those first. And the first one is Great Granny Webster by Caroline Blackwood. Now, this was a very interesting read for me. I read it for 2 specific reasons. First of all, it fit one of the prompts for my reindeer readathon that I'm doing right now, and it also is a Booker backlist book, and one of my personal goals I had for myself for 2024 was to read more Booker backlist books, so this fit the bill as well. Now, this book, as I said, was an interesting read for me, and this is a book that not everyone is going to gel with because there's 0 plot. There's absolutely no plot in this book at all. It is all about characters and people and what makes them tick, what motivates them, and all of the dirty secrets, or not necessarily dirty secrets, but all of the secrets that they hold. And basically, this is a semi-autobiographical book. Caroline Blackwood came from the Guinness fortune. So she came up through wealth and privilege, and this is her examining her family, specifically starting with Great Granny Webster and learning more about her family. So the beginning of the book, the first chapter, is dedicated to a time in Caroline's life when she was staying with her Great Granny Webster. Caroline lost both of her parents as a teenager, and she went to stay with her Great Granny Webster, and she learned very quickly that she was a very eccentric and very reclusive woman. She lived alone in this big giant house with just some servants, and she really didn't do much every day. Like, her idea of a day was basically waking up and going to sit in this chair all day. Would occasionally go out for a drive. Even though they had money, she was extremely frugal and really didn't partake in a lot of the luxuries that she could have. She was like super frugal and would eat these very odd meals for dinner, and it was just very interesting to read about her as a character. And Caroline coming into that situation as an orphan and trying to understand this character of her great-grandmother and how she got to the point that she got to. And Caroline starts to ask questions and wonder how Great Granny Webster got to be reclusive and what happened in her life to turn her into that person. And then the second chapter, we meet up with Caroline meets up with her Aunt Lavinia, and we start to dig deeper into the story, and we learn all about the family past. So we start to learn not only more about Great Granny Webster, but we learn about Caroline's parents and her grandparents. And then the story just kind of takes over from there, and we meet other people, and we're learning just constantly bits and bits about this family in general. It, like I said, has no plot. We're just learning these little bits and pieces about the family, and it was interesting. It was just kind of like sitting down with a person and her telling all of these random tales about her family. And it's an eccentric family. They are interesting. They are very unique. This book also talks a lot about wealth and how that can impact people and basically turn them into the people that they are without them even realizing it. It was morbid at times. I felt that there were parts of this book that were written very coldly, but I think that that's just basically the way that Caroline was perceiving those stories from her family. It was funny at times. It was really sad at times, but all in all, I think that it was a very interesting read. It's also a short little read. It's just over 100 pages, so if you really do like those character studies, and this would be a good book for you to pick up. So the next book that I finished was 11/22/63 by Stephen King. I'm not going to hold this one up the whole time. It's heavy. It was a chunker, but I really enjoyed my time with that book. It was not one that I was expecting to like so much, but I just found it really interesting, and it was fast-paced, and a book that was over, I think, 800 pages. Yes, over 800 pages. Went by really fast. So for those of you that don't know, this is a book about time travel, and the basic premise of this book is that we have our main character, Jake. He learns that he has a way where he can go back in time, and his kind of mission while he is traveling back in time is to prevent Lee Harvey Oswald from assassinating JFK. And this is a story that was very immersive, and it's so much more complex than just that story of him going back to save JFK. He's also trying to change other things that have happened, and you know, he realizes that obviously changing things in the past will ultimately impact things going on in the future. So it was a very, very fun and interesting and just propulsive read for me. I enjoyed absolutely every minute of reading this book, and I know that there are so many haters of Stephen King out there saying that he doesn't write real literature, but you know what? The guy knows how to write a story. He knows how to tell a good story. I love the way that he always has those little cliffhangers or those mini ledges at the end of each of his chapters just to want me to keep reading more. And every time I pick up a Stephen King book, it's one of those instances where I intend to read a chapter, and then it's 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and I realize I have to get up in the morning, and I've literally just, you know, spent 3 hours of sleeping time reading his book because I'm so invested and I just want the story to keep going. Now, I will say that there's also, you know, anytime I'm reading books, especially with time travel, I'm always questioning things. I'm always looking for the, I'm almost always looking to catch the author in an inaccuracy or something that would be improbable. And I think for the most part, Stephen King does a pretty good job of explaining all of those things that seem maybe coincidental or convenient. And I don't honestly think that he's out to write a perfect story. I think he is out just truly to tell the reader a fun story and an engaging story, and to bend their ear for a little bit to tell them about this adventure that this man has been on. And yeah, I really loved this book. I would recommend it for any fan of Stephen King. It doesn't have horror elements to it. There were a couple things in it that were unsettling or maybe a little creepy, but nothing that you would typically associate with typical Stephen King horror or anything like that. But yeah, overall, it was a very fun read for me. I'm glad that I finally got to it. This has been on my TBR for quite some time. And yeah, and a special thanks to my friend Joyce who gifted me this book. Yeah, I absolutely absolutely loved it, and thank you. So the next book that I finished is a book called Eastbound by Mélisse de Kerangal, and this was translated from the French by Jessica Moore. And this was another very propulsive read that I very much enjoyed. This is also a short book, so to kind of balance out the last one that I just read, this one I think just came in over 120 pages. So this book just jumps right into the action. We have our main character, his name is Alyosha, and he is a young, I think he's only like 20 or 22-year-old Russian, and he is on the Trans-Siberian Railroad headed to his military commitment. So for all young men of a certain age in Russia, it is mandatory for them to be a part of the military for a certain period of time, and basically he is on his way to fulfill that commitment. While he is on his way, he starts to think about everything, and he panics, and he decides that he does not want to do that, and he wants to defect, and he wants to get off of the train. So basically he comes up with this plan on how he is going to escape, and in the process he meets this woman. She's an older woman, she's in her 40s, and she is escaping in some sense as well from her life. She has left her lover, and she is going to be going back to France, where she is from. So she is a French woman. They do not communicate with each other except with like mimed gestures and things like that, because they don't understand each other's language, but they become allies on this train as they are approaching the end, when they're eventually going to have to get off. For her to go on to France to get back to her life without her lover, and then for him to basically, I guess, be on the run. I'm not sure exactly what happens when you evade your Russian military service. My guess is it's not very good, but you know, he is off to do that. And it's a very, very propulsive novel. You're on this journey with them. They're on this train, and the book is kind of moving in sync with that train. So as the train is going and propulsing, you're propulsing along with their story. And I thought that it was really interesting. I loved too the idea of you have these two strangers that are helping each other, and you don't even know each other's stories. You're just connecting with them on this, you know, chemical level. And you also have these other people in the train that are also a part of the story as well. Some of them are going to try to stop you from getting where you want, but then you're going to also find that you have allies in unlikely situations as well. And it was just a really interesting read. Once again, the plot wasn't too advanced because it was such a short novel. You really don't even have time to learn a lot about the people because the book is so short, but it was just enough to keep me going. And by the end of the book, even though I don't feel like I fully knew either of the main characters, and I didn't fully understand all of their motivations and why they were doing what they were doing, it was still enough to satisfy me, and also, you know, wish them the best and keep cheering for them at the end of the story. So yeah, I thought it was a pretty good read, and I would recommend it. All right, so moving on to the books that I'm actively reading. So I am in the process of reading The Impusium by Olga Tokarczuk. This is actually for Scott over at Gunpowder Fiction and Plot, his book club. We're actually meeting later this afternoon, so I have probably about 50 pages to finish, and I'll likely be talking about this one on my next recap. The next book that I'm reading is Winter in Sokcho. This is another book I'm reading for my reindeer readathon prompts. I am only about 45 pages into it. There's really not a whole lot going on. I once again think that this is probably going to be a more character-driven book than it is a plot-based book. I'm enjoying the writing style. It is a little sparse, but I also think that that is intentional. I feel like the author is only giving us the bare essentials to get us through the story, which is interesting. And I'll come back once I finish this a little later this week, and I'll cover it in my next recap. And then the final book that I am reading, I don't have it with me, is Intermetzo by Sally Rooney. This is a book that has been on my radar for quite a while. It was one of my most anticipated reads of the year, and I was also able to fit it into one of my reindeer readathon prompts, so I was very happy to be able to get to this one this month. And so far, it is living up to my expectations. This is a story that is following two brothers. They've recently lost their father. One is an older, I say older, meaning he's the older brother. He's in his mid-30s, I believe, early to mid-30s. He's a lawyer, and he's kind of struggling with a relationship between two women. He has his ex-girlfriend who he is no longer with, and then he has a very young girl that he is probably more in lust with than in love with, but he's kind of like supporting her financially, and he is like back and forth between these two women. And then we have his younger brother, Ivan. Him and Ivan don't necessarily see eye to eye on a lot of things. They're very different people. Ivan is a chess prodigy. Peter looks at him as being kind of, weird or an outcast. And Ivan, who is at this chess tournament, meets this older woman. Her name is Margaret, and they start a relationship, and basically tensions rise between the two brothers when Peter finds out about Ivan's relationship with Margaret. So there's a lot going on in the story. The overarching theme of all of this is related to grief and, how we deal with grief, not only grief for people that we have lost, but also for relationships that we've lost, for people that we've lost in our lives that are maybe still living. And yeah, I'm really enjoying it so far. There's just something, I wish that I could articulate what it is about Sally Rooney's writing that I just connect with. I wish that I knew, but yeah, every time I'm reading a Sally Rooney, I just immediately connect with the characters, and I just love my reading experience anytime I pick up any of her books. So I'm rather enjoying this one, and I definitely think that I think I have maybe 100 pages of it left. I cannot see me not liking it, but of course, the ending could, not land, but yeah, so far I'm really enjoying that. As far as books that I'm planning on picking up next, I don't really have too many. There's still two that I have for reading prompts for my reindeer readathon. I'm going to be reading Mrs. Caliban by Rachel Ingalls and Memories of My Melancholy Horrors by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. Those are the two other books that I have to finish for that readathon. And then after that, I'm not quite sure. I still have a little bit left of Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, and I have about 300 pages left of Les Mis to finish. I will get those done by the end of December though, and then from there, I don't know. I'm kind of debating on whether or not once I finish all of those that I just talked about, if I'll maybe give reading a rest for last few days of the year, just to not have any new books carry over, and I can just start with a brand new slate on January 1st. I don't know yet. I'm such a mood reader that I could probably pick up 3 more books by that time. As I mentioned, I have a lot more time on my hands this time of year than I normally do, so I've been doing a lot more reading, and who knows, I might have a chance to get a bunch of other books done as well. I will say that I am still in the process of filming and putting together a lot of my end of the year content, including my best of list, my worst of list. I'm also still kind of finalizing my future 2025 reading goals that I will share with you guys soon. I'm also actually, this may be of interest, I am planning this afternoon, I did a little unhaul of some books, and I'm planning on visiting some of my local little libraries to get rid of them, and I thought that maybe I would film a little vlog about that, showing you all of the books that I was able to find in exchange for those ones that I'm going to get rid of. So that might be a future video that you see as well. And also another one that I am putting, well, I actually already put it together, but I'm starting to edit it. I had some questions about how I keep track of my books, so I filmed a video on my reading journal and how I do that, so I'm hoping to get that out within the next few weeks as well. So lots to come, and until we read again, bye!